car crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
It's the attorneys. We thank you so much for joining us. I'm Mark Franklin. We've got a topic that's a critical one, what every crime victim should know about civil justice. We're going to dive into that. But as always, we like to remind you right at the beginning of the show, because lawyers start manning those phones, that you can reach an attorney at Hollis Wright by calling 1-844-LAW-TALK. Again, that's 1-844-LAW-TALK. That's a free call. It's a confidential call, and one you can make right now. And Josh, I'm really looking forward to the information that Greg's going to share with us.
Well, and Greg Zarzar is an incredible lawyer in this area. He and I actually used to practice together years ago. And he's branched out and made some great decisions on the type of law that he's practicing in Birmingham, well known in the community, and just really a superstar in this area among others. But first of all, Greg, we love having you on. I know it's been a while, but thank you for coming on.
Well, Josh, I appreciate it. It's nice to be back. And a compliment such as that, coming from a lawyer like you, really means something. Having been a part of the original origins of Hollis Wright and seeing what you and your firm have done for this community, especially with this show, in educating the public on important issues like the one we're going to talk about today.
Thank you, and it is an important issue. Tell us just a little bit about what you're doing now, your practice. Just tell us a little bit about that, because I want to make sure we promote that too.
Yeah, so while I'm based here in Birmingham, I represent crime victims throughout the country in a variety of matters, mainly in representing survivors of human trafficking in civil lawsuits, not only against sometimes the traffickers themselves, but against the industries that facilitate or otherwise profit from the trafficking.
Talk a little bit about this topic. This topic itself is unique. It's not a topic we've done a lot of shows on, but there is a significant interplay between a criminal victim in the criminal case and also the civil benefit and justice that they can get through the civil courts. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's really important that every crime victim know that obviously the purpose of the criminal process is to punish that defendant, the wrongdoer, to potentially imprison that person, given the seriousness of the crime. Separately, because the victim, through no fault of their own, has been harmed, they separately need to evaluate whether or not they need to file a civil case and meet with a civil lawyer about what their remedies are under the civil justice system. The most obvious example in our lifetime was the O.J. Simpson case, where despite the fact that the criminal jury found O.J. Simpson not guilty of the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, he was found liable in the civil case for their wrongful deaths.
We see this a ton in dram shop litigation, and we've done a bunch of dram shop shows where we're dealing with someone that engaged in drinking while driving, caused an accident. Generally, the damages are significant. Sometimes even death is involved. And there's a criminal DUI proceeding that goes on. At the same time, we may be evaluating a civil case because you may have both at the same time. Greg's highlighting a super important concept, which is getting a lawyer involved in these cases that understands the implications of the criminal side of the case as well as the civil side of the case is super important. Sometimes I found that criminal victims just assume the restitution that the DA is going to be able to push on the criminal defendant is all they can recover, and the answer is that's not generally the case.
No, that's not generally the case, and restitution is limited to out-of-pocket expenses and not looking ahead to future life-altering things that the victim may need or their family may need in the future. I like to talk about complete justice or full justice. Obviously, the criminal side is just one side of the coin. If someone wants full justice or complete justice, they need to evaluate the civil remedies relative to not just the perpetrator of the crime, but any other third parties that may have facilitated or otherwise contributed to the crime.
Absolutely. Greg, I want to know, are there specific challenges that crime victims may face when they're trying to pursue that full justice or civil justice in a case?
Yeah, so naturally, a lot of times the civil case may be on hold or paused during the pendency of the criminal case. But I think inherently it's really helpful if a crime victim has a civil attorney, because technically they are not a party to the criminal case. The government brings the prosecution against the criminal actor. So it is either the state of Alabama versus, let's say the criminal actor's name is John Jones, or the United States of America versus John Jones if it's a federal crime. Nowhere in there is there a lawyer for the victim. So the victim having a civil lawyer not only will help them evaluate what their potential civil claims could be, but also help them understand what is happening throughout the criminal process, which is why, you know, it's really humbling to help families or survivors through that process so they have a better understanding of what is happening, not only in the criminal process, but how we as civil lawyers may be able to help them.
Not just that, talk just a little bit about insurance, because sometimes you've got a criminal defendant that engaged in certain conduct where insurance could be applicable, and sometimes insurance could be excluded in those cases. Having someone be able to evaluate and give you good advice is important.
No doubt about it. That is, and knowing what claims to bring and not bring so as to potentially jeopardize the insurance coverage that could be in play. That's why you want to talk to an experienced lawyer that knows what they're doing in this context. And separately, so that you also have maybe the respect of law enforcement. Having done a lot of this work, you never want to do anything that may interfere. And in fact, what we've been able to do over the years is sometimes assist, because we may be looking for evidence or preserving evidence that law enforcement may not have been thinking about because it was not pertinent to just the prosecution of that particular perpetrator, where we're looking at a broader picture and evaluating the civil claim.
And a lot of times, Art, what we see is, you know, let's take a simple example. You have a college student who goes to college still within the range of covered under the parent's homeowner's policy, even though he's at college, gets involved in a fight, causes serious injury to someone else, maybe requires surgery, and the lawyer that is handling the civil side of that case is working with the district attorney who may be prosecuting a criminal case. And if you plead the civil case improperly, number one, you're probably going to have to be patient to let the criminal case run its course. But if you plead the case incorrectly as a lawyer on the civil side, you could eviscerate or eliminate any potential homeowners coverage that would be applicable to help compensate someone civil. That is one simple example. We could talk about rape and incest and sexual abuse, which we will after the break. But that's just one simple example about making sure you have someone on your team that understands how do you plead these cases correctly to activate coverage, get leverage for the benefit of your civil individual victim, and be able to recover in the policy. And look, we're going to talk, I know, after the break. I want to talk about some of the examples Greg sees, because he sees all sorts of this stuff outside of just my simple examples of DUI and a fist fight. So we'll talk about that when we come back from the break.
You're very good examples of that. We're going to take a break right here, guys, and let you know that you can always reach Hollis Wright right now at 1-844-LAW-TALK. That's 1-844-LAW-TALK. Lawyers standing by. They've got the phone in hand waiting for you to call them. It's a free and confidential call. You can also reach Hollis Wright throughout the week on all social media platforms. Go ahead and do that. Like it, share it, and let other people know about it. We're going to continue this conversation. We're going to take this break, but we'll be here for you when we come back.
Here's some good information from our firm to you. Hollis Wright recently launched the Law Talk podcast. With podcasts becoming so popular, this will be a simple way to provide our loyal viewers with more opportunities to access information about important legal topics and to learn more about our firm and how we can help you if the need ever arises. There are many ways to access the Law Talk podcast. You can simply scan the QR code on your screen. Also, episodes are always available on the Hollis Wright YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you consume your podcasts. Just search up Hollis Wright in the Law Talk podcast. Don't wait, take advantage and listen today. Thanks for watching The Attorneys, and we know you'll enjoy the Law Talk podcast.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show in 2011, my goal was to do what our firm does best. Help people answer questions related to real-world legal issues they have in their lives in a way that's not intimidating to talk with a lawyer. If the issue is important to you, it's equally important to us, and we're ready to talk with you at no cost.
Yeah, oftentimes people are confronting various legal issues in their lives that really run the gamut of a lot of different legal practice areas, such as bankruptcy, criminal law, civil law, such as personal injury, divorces, domestic relations. And to be able to have a show once a week that covers those practice areas and answers people's questions in those areas, that's really the main objective of the show.
We use the resources of the many lawyers at our law firm to create a plan that has a lasting impact for each person that calls or texts. And we also give back to the community at the same time. We are here to serve you, the viewer, each week on The Attorneys.
Addiction kills hope.
But at Bradford, it all changes here.
Experience the difference
that proven treatment can make.
Find recovery. Find community.
At Bradford.
I want to welcome you back to The Attorneys as we are talking about civil remedies. That's something we want to get into as we come back from break. We took a break and we put a pin on some other things there, but I wanted to get into this if I can. The difference between the criminal cases and the civil cases and what you're doing in terms of civil justice.
Yeah, so obviously we touched on already about how the crime victim is not a party to the criminal case. Mm-hmm. The other kind of major difference would be the burden of proof. In the criminal case, and rightly so, it is the highest burden of proof. The prosecution or the government has to prove the guilt of the defendant in a criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt. I like to use kind of percentages. I usually say 95%. It's not beyond all doubt, just beyond a reasonable doubt. On the civil side, the burden of proof is simply more likely than not, or a preponderance of the evidence. So anything over 50%. So I've represented crime victims whose the defendant was found not guilty in the criminal context, but we were still able to bring a civil case. I've even represented a ton of crime victims, especially in what I call, behind the door type crimes like child sex abuse, rape, sexual assault, where the prosecution may not bring charges or bring a case, but we're still able to bring a civil case even if no criminal charges were brought on behalf of a crime.
You've also championed committees and whatnot on human trafficking. Can you talk just a little bit about that? Because I was lucky enough, of course, to be president of our Association for Justice, the former Trial Lawyers Association, but you've really been actively involved in championing some of those committees.
Yeah, well, obviously, again, thanks to the leadership of lawyers like yourself that help lawyers that do this type of work organize, strategize together. What I recognized through some of the child sex abuse work that I was doing is that some of those victims were running away from home because they thought their situations could never get any worse. And then they were being re-victimized on the streets by a trafficker. And hearing those stories led me to look at the trafficking law. And it was first defined, even though it's been around for forever, but it was first defined by Congress in the year 2000. And I think recognizing the severity of the issue and the inability for law enforcement to address it by themselves, they have, since passing that law, added a civil remedy provision to it. And even after adding the civil remedy provision, they have amended it to expand it. So you can not only sue just the perpetrator, you can sue anyone who knowingly financially benefited from something that was in violation of the statute, a trafficking situation. And so some of the classic examples of cases that we have filed have been against websites, the notorious Backpage.com that has now been shut down, hotels that are complicit or facilitate trafficking by allowing the traffickers to use it as their venue. It is the venue of choice for human traffickers in the United States.
And I know that this is complicated because it may not be as simple as just saying, well, the trafficking happened at a hotel. It may be more complicated and more fact intensive to determine how the hotel is responsible, whether it is the hotel is aware that there is a bodyguard outside a door consistently and people are coming in and out. It may be based on the fact that they do not gather information about who's checking in and who's checking out and don't ask for licenses, only take cash. There are a lot of things you use in those cases to show that there was some involvement and collaborative nature between the person actually trafficking and the hotels.
No doubt about it. And the industry, the hotel industry, has been aware of it for some time now, thanks to government programs, awareness situations where there's a ton of these red flags that you talk about. And what I have often found to be most interesting in some of our human trafficking cases against hotels is that I will say, okay, where did this happen? And I will look online at online reviews, whether it's like Yelp, TripAdvisor, or some other service. And some unsuspecting business traveler or family may be staying at this hotel and in one night can recognize that human trafficking is occurring there. It's really difficult for a hotel operator that's either living there or there daily to say, I had no idea what was happening here, especially when they get on those reviews to say thank you for the good reviews, but just ignore the ones where they were provided notice of the trafficking occurring there.
You know, when I think about what you're doing, it's really a noble cause. Because there's so many victims out there in human trafficking, and these cases, when you hear about them, just really break your heart. And I'm just wondering also, what role do insurance companies play in terms of the compensation in some of these cases?
Well, obviously, because the only thing we can get these survivors is money through the civil justice system, we have to be focused on where can we achieve a meaningful recovery for someone that violated the statute or otherwise had unreasonable conduct that leads to liability. So that's an evaluation that experienced lawyers need to do with every case and make sure they are targeting those defendants where there is the potential for insurance and the potential for a meaningful recovery. Because, look, litigation is an adversarial process by nature. It is plaintiff versus defendant. And so these defense lawyers hired by insurance companies, they have a job to do too. So it is, I don't, without great thought, put a survivor through an adversarial process that can in and of itself be re-traumatizing and invasive unless I feel comfortable that the potential recovery will be significant and meaningful, which is why you need to target those defendants that would have adequate insurance or resources. We, obviously have to evaluate that in every case and make sure that we are focused on what we can recover.
Do you see that your civil victims have got to be super patient sometimes because of the speed of the criminal cases?
That happens a lot, and
because managing that is not easy.
It is not easy because obviously the objective of any civil lawyer is to move a civil case from point A to closure as quickly but efficiently and expertly as you can. But because the criminal process is happening alongside of it, you take the good with the bad. The good being, obviously, law enforcement has probably been very responsive and able to preserve and gather information at the very beginning of a case that sometimes may be lost by the time someone visits with a civil lawyer. So there's some benefits to it. Separately, we have, at least in this community, both at the federal and state level, really good leadership within our district attorney's office and U.S. attorney's offices. And they have victim advocates there that can help them along that way. But at the same time, having a civil lawyer can help not only understand the process, but maybe expedite it as well.
And I want to talk when we come back, because I know we're headed to break, but Art, I want to talk when we come back about the nuts and bolts of how a civil lawyer actually can use the benefit of some of the evidence that's been gathered on the criminal side, and how you have access to the witnesses they may need to be able to make their criminal case, where the two can work together symbiotically, if you will, for an ultimate recovery both on the criminal and the civil side. Let's talk about that when we come back.
Okay, all right, we'll do that. Want to remind you to follow us, Hollis Wright, on all social media platforms, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, X. Make sure you go ahead and follow us there. Subscribe, follow, and share. Subscribe, follow, and share. Some really good information that's there throughout the week, so make sure you go ahead and check that out. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Thank you for watching The Attorneys each Sunday night, where we come to your living room to provide free legal advice in a confidential, off-air setting. Unfortunately, with the number of calls, texts, and emails that come in during the show, we can't always get to everything. But know this, Hollis Wright is open all week long. You call us at 844-LAW-TALK and we're going to answer your question for free. Thank you for watching The Attorneys, and we look forward to seeing you and talking to you soon.
If this place could talk, it wouldn't. It would sing and celebrate all of our stories of addiction recovery, victory, and community. This is Bradford Health Services. It all changes here.
Welcome back. You are watching The Attorneys, and we're talking about what every crime victim should know in civil justice. And we've been talking with Greg about that. And Greg, this has really been so important stuff. And we ran into one another at the One Place event, so I know that he not only does this, he believes this because it's a part of your heart. That's just so important to do.
And one of the things I want to talk about is, I know we mentioned that sometimes because the criminal case takes a little bit longer than the civil lawyer likes and the civil victim likes, and that's not because the criminal justice system is not doing its job, it's just it's backlogged. But so we talked about patience, but I do want to talk just a little bit about how the two can work together, where they can meld together that benefits both sides.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So obviously, the easiest way to show that would be if there is a conviction in the criminal case, especially as it relates to human trafficking victims. You're not having to, the way the law defines it, if you're an adult over the age of 18, the federal law says a trafficking victim is someone who is exploited by force, fraud, or coercion to either do some type of labor or commit a commercial sex act. So if you have a conviction for human trafficking, it is a little less burdensome to show the force, fraud, or coercion, because that point has been proven. You are a victim of human trafficking, and you don't have to show the force, fraud, or coercion element. So, the prosecution of these cases is extremely important, not only because you're putting really bad people away, but separately the benefit to the survivor to see that justice, number one, and then be able to use the justice achieved in the criminal case to help bolster their civil case.
You've got to have a lawyer walk you through this, right? I mean, this is really next level complicated stuff that if you don't have an experienced lawyer, you're going to miss something that matters, that can benefit you on the civil side.
And so complicated in even what these perpetrators are doing out there in terms of you guys fighting human trafficking. So it's not just on the streets, but also these websites out there where they trap people.
Well, and this is a really unfortunate reality in our current society. We live in the tech world, so the tort world and the tech world are trying to figure each other out. And unfortunately, people that want to hurt children, bad actors that want to hurt kids, traditionally, if they wanted to do that, they had to go get some position in society, whether it was a scout leader, a coach, a teacher, a youth pastor, whatever it may be, build a reputation in the community, and then maybe take a chance on one kid that they thought were vulnerable. In the tech world, They pretend to be, we see this case all the time. I'm an 18-year-old girl that goes to this high school. Hey, you 15-year-old boy that goes to the rival high school, let's be friends online. And they develop a relationship. Or even worse, younger kids on online gaming. Hey, I'll give you a free, cheat code to get to this level or unlock this character or this if you send me a picture. And, one inappropriate picture that a child may send to a bad person then becomes leverage. And we have seen, it's called sextortion, where if someone has an image, then they either demand more or demand money. And
or they're going to publish it.
Yeah. They're going to send it to all their friends. I know who all your friends are. I'm going to send it to your high school. We'll do all this stuff to embarrass you. And we've seen completed suicides where kids feel like it's too overwhelming to handle the situation. And we just want to let them know that there are lawyers here to help. Like, you can get help through these situations. You're never alone. Go to a trusted adult. Hopefully seek some legal counsel, and we can work through that process. And we've been able to file cases against websites who have, based on our allegations, engaged in human trafficking. Because I talked about force, fraud, and coercion if it involved an adult, someone over the age of 18. But you don't have to prove force, fraud, or coercion if the victim is under the age of 18. They very well may be quote unquote consenting or participating, but it doesn't matter. If you have someone under the age of 18 in a commercial sex act, that is human trafficking by definition per se.
Do you think that technology has made it more, well, let's say it this way. Do you think technology has made it simpler for the traffickers to do their job?
Well, I think it's made
and how do you combat that as a lawyer?
I think it's made it easier for bad actors to target children. And we know that traffickers, like in these hotel settings, they can operate off a smartphone. They get free Wi-Fi access. They can post the ads on whatever website. Traditionally it was Backpage.com. There are other websites that have popped up since it's been closed. And they can literally operate out of a smartphone in their pocket in a hotel room with free Wi-Fi, with financial apps like Cash App or whatever it may be, so that those transactions can happen, encrypted end to end, and with little or no expense to the trafficker as far as like an overhead type thing.
Do you find it at times that you're actually, as the lawyer on the civil side, open to communicating with the district attorney that may be looking for information and evidence that you have gathered in your investigation? Because your investigation may at some point be even more thorough.
No doubt. And it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
I have benefited from countless times from law enforcement's investigation, and then separately been able to point them to information that we have preserved either through social media, communications, messages that incriminate the criminal defendant that they may not have in their traditional course of investigation uncovered.
Greg Zarzar, two things. Number one, thank you for being on. Two, thank you for the cause that you've championed. It's an awesome cause.
Well, I appreciate
Good work.
it. Man,
Keep it up.
Thank you very
Keep
much.
it up.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you as well for joining us here on The Attorneys. We covered a lot of ground with this topic, and want to let you know that we also cover ground throughout the week on all our social media platforms. Make sure you check out Hollis right there. And we hope you join us back here again next week for another edition of The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.